While they aren't the titan of the industry that they once were, Rare has been the proud creators of a myriad of titles spanning multiple genres. Founded by brothers Chris and Tim Stamper in 1985, who also started the development studio Ultimate Play the Game, Rare occupied the illustrious position of being a second-party developer for Nintendo, with an infinite wallet in their bottomless pockets, leading them to champion some of Nintendo's prime IPs across 3 generations of consoles. After putting out a solid library of titles for the NES and continuing that lineage on the Super Nintendo with the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, Rare's most renowned pieces of work arguably came on the Nintendo 64. But first, today's video is brought to you by Raid: Shadow Legends. Raid is an immersive game with amazing champion characters, but it's also full of badass bosses, like Thorn Deville, just a regular guy who decided to proclaim himself as mightier than the gods. Unfortunately, he isn't smarter than the gods, which is why he's stuck in the Force Keep forever, unwilling to give up his crown. And you also have Princess Avila. She found an ancient hedge that promised her dark magic in exchange for souls. She harvested so many souls that she became so strong that she had to be locked away in this tower to keep the kingdom safe. If you want to avoid your own souls being harvested, you'll need abilities that can strip her buffs. That's what we love about Raid, the way it blends its deep lore into its gameplay. This month, Raid has a huge schedule of summer events, special fusion events to get a brand new legendary champion, tournaments against other players, and much more. They're also releasing 5 amazing new champions, and each of them looks badass. Raid's summer plans are just starting to heat up, so there's really never been a better time to get started. But if you need more incentive to download, you'll get a huge bonus by hitting the link in the description or scanning the QR code right here. New players will get the epic hero Chinoru, who's amazing in Doom Tower, 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion right when you get in-game. You'll find your extra rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only. It's all that easy. Just click the link in the description to get started. Thanks Raid: Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. We'll see you all in-game. Now let's get back to the video. Whether it's racing titles collecting balloons and hovercrafts, marsupials hunting giant golden bananas, or space police fighting an army of intergalactic ants, Rare has a diverse portfolio on the Nintendo 64, and today we'll be ranking all the entries that appeared on the console. Mickey Speedway USA. More than likely Rare's least remembered N64 release. There's a reason Mickey Speedway USA doesn't race to the forefront of your mind when someone mentions Rare, and is instead replaced by top secret agents or backpack sporting bears. While you can't make a kart racer without being compared to Mario Kart, as it incepted the genre, at face value, MS USA could appear to be just that and that alone. However, to give it its due, it has enough breakaway and unique elements to it that allow it to piece together and formulate an identity all of its own. A fully licensed and authentic Disney game that had Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and a handful of other synonymous animated faces, this racer had the building blocks of a good racer at its core that allows it to stand up proudly on its own 2 feet. The game has different stats for each of its racers, rather than just being a cosmetic choice, and the track design is respectable, with 3 levels of difficulty to choose from. It has a range of modes, unlockable content, secrets, and a soundtrack that only bolsters the studio's joyous and always tonally on-point catalog. Mickey Speedway USA is more than just a Mario Kart clone. Killer Instinct Gold. Another series that carried over from the Super Nintendo. Killer Instinct Gold sought to emulate its predecessor, but ultimately didn't get to the level that the original game reached in either the arcade or home console markets. Being modeled after Mortal Kombat with its more animated character roster, fast-paced combat, and graphic violence, KIG originally started out as a Super Nintendo title that eventually ran over on development and got ported over to the N64 in 1996. Killer Instinct 2 for the SNES even got finished after KIG was completed, but Nintendo didn't even release it. Killer Instinct Gold's failings did not all lay at the feet of the men and women at Rare. With the original game being incredibly popular in arcades, Nintendo split the sequel between another arcade version and a home console version for the N64. The development team was cut in half for the two projects, and the design ideas were apparently changing often. The arcade port somewhat overshadowed the console iteration thanks to the better hardware at the cabinet's disposal, with the arcade game scaled back to fit on the more limited N64 cartridge. Missing several fan-favorite characters, being graphically divisive, and changing fundamental pillars of its gameplay mechanics to less impressive or functional versions, Killer Instinct Gold has faded from memory and was eclipsed by other fighting games of the time. Thankfully, the Killer Instinct brand has been salvaged to some degree by the Xbox One reboot. Donkey Kong 64. Donkey Kong 64 has cemented its place in gaming and meme history thanks to the DK rap. Rare's 3D Donkey Kong Adventure has all the hallmarks of the legendary developer, but when you take a long, hard look past the rose-tinted lenses of the golden era of gaming, the cold and harsh realities become visible. Now don't get us wrong, we're not saying that Donkey Kong 64 is a bad game, per se. The elements that it incorporates are all fine on their own. It's more the way it serves its buffet of mechanics rather than the individual pieces themselves. After creating and nurturing Donkey Kong and other members of the Kong family through a trilogy of games on the Super Nintendo, Nintendo would have no qualms about letting Rare take the reins with the Great Ape on their next console and into a new dimension. And on the surface, DK64 is a perfectly fine game that falls in line with their other collectathon titles. There's a lot going on in DK64. Multiple characters with their own powers, instruments, and weapons. You've got hub worlds, bonus rounds, puzzles, minigames, bosses. There's a lot of moving parts. The problem lies in that, with the character-specific items to collect and the sheer number of mechanics at work, the gameplay is almost too divided, with roadblocks to progress popping up so much they don't allow any rhythm to the gameplay, constantly requiring the player to change character, backtrack, or does something that impedes progress to a vaguely annoying degree. That said, DK64 is full of all the charm that Rare has become known for, and if you have the patience and enjoy a more slow burn experience, DK64 can still provide a lot of enjoyment. Jet Force Gemini, a game that gets lost in the mix between the endless multiplayer shenanigans that GoldenEye caused and the many lost hours of saving Jinjos as Banjo and Kazooie. Jet Force Gemini isn't the prettiest game to look at today, probably because it looks like a game with a limited budget. But it's a great mix of intense action, frantic gunfights, classic Rare platforming, and of course, things to collect. A third-person shooter with elements of shoot-'em-ups from way back in the 1980s, JFG follows the eponymous trio of intergalactic peacekeepers called Juno, Vila, and their four-legged crime-fighting canine, Lupus, who have to save a race of adorable bear-like creatures called tribals from the evil Mazar and his ant insect army. Each character has their own ability, and you can upgrade your health, ammo, and find new weapons as you progress. While the game is very much a love letter to the shooting games of yore, with its hectic firefights and almost punishing difficulty, it incorporates aforementioned traits of other game genres, so it doesn't become just a space-themed shooting gallery. The main focus is defeating the different enemy types in each area, but exploration is a key factor too, which in turn will force the player to maneuver jumps, ledges, and other hazards. The updated version, included on the Rare Replay compilation of games released a few years back on Xbox One, is a much more accessible way to play the title, as using the manual targeting feature on an N64 controller was by no means an easy feat. It also has a multiplayer mode and a co-op option to add to the fun as well. Often overshadowed by the much bigger IPs Rare is known for, JFG doesn't deserve to be overlooked. Diddy Kong Racing. One of the most admirable and impressive things about Rare was their ability to create fantastic games in a number of different genres, bucking the usual trend of development studios sticking to just one type of game. The strongest card in their hand has probably been their open-world collecting and/or platforming titles. But Diddy Kong Racing proves they can make a brilliant racing game too. An all-star racer featuring a cast of characters both known and obscure, Diddy Kong Racing mirrors that of another critically acclaimed racer, that being Crash Team Racing for the PlayStation 1. DKR takes the form of a racing adventure game that functions in the same manner as CTR, where the player has to win races and worlds to earn balloons that grant access to new areas, courses, and challenges. An axiom that permeates almost all of Rare's games is the feature of having multiple ways to explore its worlds, navigate the environments, or interact in one way or another with the levels or other characters. In DKR, they change one track into three by having the different vehicles of kart, hovercraft, and plane all having their own layout and optimum racing lines, giving the game a ton of replay value. And while it may look cute on the outside, Diddy Kong Racing is one tough cookie to crack. You'll need nerves of steel and a refined technique to power slide effectively to take the coveted pole position of first place, especially in the boss races. Conker's Bad Fur Day. Not so much as throwing the rulebook out the window as it did stomp on it head first into a wood chipper, Conker's Bad Fur Day broke all the rules in a drunken stupor with a pint of beer in one hand and an Uzi 9mm in the other. To say it took people, particularly parents, and a young me, by surprise would have been an understatement. Knowing the original game that preceded it, that being Conker's Pocket Tales for the Game Boy Color, it's mind-boggling how Nintendo ever gave the green light for Rare to make a game full of explicit content, sexualized insects, alcohol consumption, and foul-mouthed rodents firing automatic weapons. Considering Nintendo had for 99% of its releases and dealings looked to maintain a wholesome and family-friendly image, this did not fit that at all. I guess it shows how much trust and faith the Big N had in the company at that time. What makes Conker's Bad Fur Day so cherished is that it's the rebel of the group, and everyone loves a rebel and an underdog. It's so anti-Nintendo. Therein lies its appeal. Its toilet humor, crass attitude, and fourth wall breaking were practically unseen back at the time of release. And while this all worked in its favor, there was still a great game under all the swear words and innuendos. It's a shame the IP flatlined after the company was acquired by Microsoft, as many fans were hoping for a true sequel. The Matrix and Saving Private Ryan parodies alone are also good enough reason to play it. Banjo-Kazooie. Fully embracing Rare's penchant for making games based around picking up a lot of different stuff, Banjo-Kazooie epitomizes this design philosophy, but does it with a goofy smile and whimsical nature where you don't care about collecting your 800th musical note because you're having too much fun. This 1998 platformer follows Honey Bear Banjo and his backpack-dwelling Breagle friend, Kazooie, as they look to rescue Banjo's sister Tootie, who's been kidnapped by the evil witch Gruntilda, so she can steal the bear's youth and good looks. The bird and bear must explore the painting worlds in Grunty's lair, collecting jigsaw pieces known as Jiggies and musical notes to unlock more and more areas of the hag's lair to face off with her and get Banjo's sibling back. The level design of Banjo-Kazooie is on par with that of Super Mario 64. Each world feels distinct and unique, full of memorable characters and puzzles to solve that genuinely feel like they've been crafted with real care and attention. Rare also does a fantastic job with building a game out of smaller mechanics that keep your actions diversified, so you don't end up doing the same thing all the time. You'll get the same type of things like collect 5x things or beat this boss, but you'll never be doing them long enough where that action grows stale. And Banjo-Kazooie is a testament to how good Rare is at that kind of design. GoldenEye 007. Often credited for creating a multiplayer revolution on console games, and being no slouch in the single-player department either, GoldenEye 007 is widely regarded as one of Rare's best games for a very good reason. Playing it today, the game hasn't exactly stood the test of time, but you can still appreciate what GoldenEye has to offer. Everyone remembers the joys of playing 4-player deathmatch games against your friends, except when someone would play as Oddjob, but the game's campaign is just as strong as the local PvP. GoldenEye was a thorough first-person shooter, but the game had very nuanced and subtle twists on almost every mission that made it slightly different or had you doing something unique to that mission. Some levels had you drive a tank, the Archives mission started you out with no weapons and had you break out of a guarded facility, the Frigate mission saw you saving hostages, and one of the bunker levels had you use your watch's hidden magnet to swipe your cell key off the wall. The brutal difficulty was also not just a simple increase in damage output or increase in enemy numbers. Objectives were added or changed on the harder difficulties, forcing you to venture to areas of the level you wouldn't see on the easier modes, or potentially changing up your playstyle in some way due to the nature of the task at hand. Then obviously there's the multiplayer. Control-wise, the game was okay, even a little bit janky at times, but it was the pace of the game and the level of customization it gave you was where the true heart of the joy laid. Running around the maps against your friends with only rocket launchers and golden guns was a staple for many 90s kids, and is a nostalgia unlike many generations will have a chance to experience. Perfect Dark. It's kind of unfair to categorize it as such, but essentially Perfect Dark was the refinement of everything Rare learned from developing GoldenEye 007, resulting in a better game in almost every department, and one of the finest pieces of work they've ever created. Very much the spiritual successor to 007's Outing, it was the finesse and design in the Fringe editions that helps Joanna Dark's adventure get the leg up over the British secret agent. Bonus features like being able to customize the aspects of the campaign levels, various cheats and modifiers, and even being able to play the missions in cooperative and counter-operative mode all helped PD become a critical masterpiece. This time around, you had voice acting to bolster the narrative impact, one of GoldenEye's weakest areas, a smoother and cleaner UI, inventive weapons that all had an alternative fire function, originally crafted levels, weird and wonderful futuristic gadgets, and a hub area of sorts where the player could undertake training and challenges for the various weapons. The multiplayer also got an upgrade, retaining all the options from GoldenEye, but this time returning the AI bots, each with customizable personalities, special modes like Hold the Briefcase in Hacker Central, and unlockable content in the game being able to be used in PvP. The game is a virtual documentation of everything the team learned from making the James Bond shooter, both good and bad. Sadly, the Xbox 360 launch title of Perfect Dark Zero did not have anywhere near the same impact, but the XBLA and Rare Replay versions make the game more palatable to today's audience. Banjo-Tooie. A sequel is very tricky to get right. A new IP can burst onto the scene with no preconceived notions or expectations, but the follow-up to that has to shoulder the weight of the initial piece of media success and acclaim. Banjo-Tooie is a sequel that not only meets the standard of its predecessor, but surpasses them and makes improvements over the first game's shortcomings. It takes everything from the first game and just adds more stuff. You start with all the moves and elements you originally had in Banjo-Kazooie, and you gain more moves and abilities that give the game greater depth and make it a more dynamic experience. Whereas before you just had standard eggs, you now have multiple kinds, including the explosive grenade eggs and the remote control clockwork eggs. Mumbo Jumbo is no longer a hermit and is a controllable character who uses his magic in the world. Jam Jars gives you more advanced moves than his brother Bottles did, and being the strong independent animals they are, Banjo and Kazooie can now split up to solve puzzles. The level design has also been elaborated on by having worlds that link together, creating a feeling of a much more connected environment rather than purely segmented portions of isolated levels. Banjo-Tooie is one of Rare's best games ever and a must-own title for the Nintendo 64. But let us know what you think. Rare released some classics on the N64. Which was your favorite? Make sure to hit that notification bell, and if you need a one-up, be sure to binge our other videos. Thanks for watching.